Vladimir Putin has spent the best part of 2 decades as the leader of Russia, saying he would never allow people to work longer. But in a televised speech on Wednesday, the president said change is essential as the country struggles with a growing number of pensioners and a shrinking workforce. However, Putin also walked back on some of the initial reforms after his government came under fierce criticism over its pension plans. The changes include supporting women, who Putin says the government cherishes.
We have a special, caring attitude to women in our country. We understand that they not only work their jobs, but the whole household is usually on them. They're taking care of the family, bringing up children, busing themselves with grandchildren. The retirement age for women should not be increased more than for men. So I believe it necessary to lower the increase of the retirement age for women suggested by the bill from 8 to 5 years.
Women will now be able to retire at 60 rather than 63. For men, the planned 5-year increase to 65 will remain the same. There are also fresh measures to smooth the transition to the new rules and to help older workers find jobs. Putin previously tried to distance himself from the pension changes, but even so, according to independent polls, the reform sent his approval rating down from 80% to 67%, its lowest level in more than 4 years. Tens of thousands of people have rallied across Russia in recent weeks. So will Putin's speech be enough to diffuse public anger?
I think they'll just increase the age again and again and again. So I don't believe in this whole story.
I agree with the reforms. I think it should be increased, but not as sharply as previously proposed. It's better more gradually.
I think that because it's been discussed so negatively in public, Putin wants to smooth things over. But I guess reform is inevitable. He softened things a bit for women, but not for the rest of the population.
While the government may have backtracked, many economists agree that change is needed to ease the government's economic burden. Lower oil prices, a weaker ruble and international sanctions imposed on Russia have put the brakes on the economy and left the government in a cash crunch.
I believe that this negative impact could be minimized if the authorities put more effort into explaining the need for this reform, because right now there is so much criticism from different press sources and even from some experts, and to my mind the government is doing not enough to actually voice the reasons, the good reasons for reform and the potential good outcomes of the reform.
The government says it can't postpone this decision any longer, but after a string of recent tax hikes and spending cuts, further belt-tightening measures are unlikely to go down well. Jessica King, TRT World, Moscow.
Well, for more on this, let's bring in our editor-at-large, Craig Copetas in Paris. Craig, hello again. So we heard there that Putin is largely sticking to his guns. He's urging Russians to accept what he's described as painful pension reforms in order to avoid economic ruin. Many economists agree with him. He is right on this issue, isn't he?
Well, yeah, he's right, but his problem isn't women. His Achilles heel is women and men in uniform. Look, there are about 44 million total pensioners in Russia right now, and they take in about $107 billion a year. 12 million of them are military retirees, and Putin has to be sure that he keeps the military happy. Now, your average civilian pensioner in Russia gets $210 a month. The military gets $350 a month. That's a significant difference. So as long as the money keeps going out, particularly to the military with no cutbacks, Putin's going to be quite safe about this.
And while this plan to raise the retirement age, it is a significant reform, but it isn't going to solve all of Russia's economic problems, is it? What else does Putin need to consider?
Well, first of all, Oscar, I don't see this as a significant reform. If you read the documents here, what he's doing is he's lowering the proposed pension age of women by 5 years. Right now, there's one pensioner for every 2.3 people of working age in Russia. In 1959, the ratio was 5 to 1. that number is going to get worse. Putin needs to regenerate his economy, and to do that, he's going to have to sell more oil somehow. He's going to try to have to get the sanctions be unshackled, I should say, from the sanctions that the U.S. has put on him. I don't see how he is going to do that. There's going to be a further deterioration of the Russian economy. But as long as Putin has the military on his side, putting his opponents in jail for a few months isn't going to cause many waves. He has to keep the military happy, because every successful revolution in the history of Russia has involved the military, both the Bolshevik Revolution and, of course, the overthrow of communism in 1990. The military sided with the people. Okay. He has to keep the military happy.
Okay, and what about Putin's flagging popularity? Obviously, he's got several years left on this term. Do you think he can manage to sort of resurrect his approval rating?
I don't know. What I do know is he can survive until the end of this term. He will try to anoint a successor who goes along with his policies. I really don't think that the polls mean anything to him, because it's Russia. Yeah. If you believe the polls, well, I have some swampland I want to sell you in Florida. The polls are manipulated in Russia.
Okay. Craig Copetas in Paris, thanks as always.